Hi, and welcome to Voice with Julia's Technique Talks, where we demystify conversations surrounding vocal technique with great singers of today. I'm so excited to present today's guest, baritone Babatunde Akinboboye, who is not only a fantastic performer on the operatic stage, he is also the creator of a new musical genre known as hiphopera. And what I love about my interview with Babatunde is how imagery and imagination play into his vocal technique. In fact, he even likens turning over in the baritone voice to avoiding bumping into people at a house party. So you're going to want to catch this interview. Nigerian-American baritone Babatunde Akinboboye is known for his enthralling stage presence. He has performed with the Los Angeles Opera, Opera San Jose, Opera Santa Barbara, Long Beach Opera, and Utah Opera. Babatunde has also debuted the roles of Drew in the OperaWorks Arts for Social Awareness Project's world premiere productions of the Discord Opera and Zani in the world premiere of Gloria Coates' Stolen Identity. His most recent performances include Dagu in LA Opera's Moby Dick, Escamillo in Pacific Opera Project's production of Carmen, and Luca's father in the industry's production of Hopscotch. As an advocate for the performance of art song and operatic works written by African and African-American composers, Mr. Akinboboye has headlined the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry Awards in Lagos, Nigeria, performing a fusion of opera and traditional African music, and has been a featured performer at both the National Association of Negro Musicians annual conference as well as the African American Art Song Alliance conference. Babatunde's honors include regional finalist of the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions and finalist in the International Eisteddfod vocal solo competition in Llangollen, Wales. In December of 2018, Babatunde combined his love of classical opera and hip-hop and created the new genre hiphopera in a viral video that gained over 10 million views and was featured on Time.com, Classic FM, MSN.com, and more. His debut EP, De La Chita, is now available. Now, without further ado, I present Babatunde Akinboboye. So happy to have you here on this show, Babatunde. Thank you so much for joining me.
Not a problem, not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's get right to it. As a lot of people who are watching this know, your video went viral, and it's you kind of bringing opera to the mainstream. A lot of there's just a feeling of real, true, this awesome baritone sound coming through with this beat that's really gets people. So, we're hearing that and I'm thinking, wow, okay, not only is this really interesting musically, but you're a brilliant technician, absolutely phenomenal singer. So I wanted to have you here to talk about that and just to get your perspective on, your road as a singer, building your technique and how that came through for you. So, maybe walk me through your vocal development.
I can do that. My journey to music was, I guess all of ours is unusual, but I didn't start. I wasn't introduced to music technically until I was 16. I had heard music obviously before, but no one in my family plays an instrument or is a musician. I didn't understand, I wasn't even aware of the concept of harmony. I'd heard the word before and I just thought oh, let's all get along. That's a harmony. But for instance, the group Boys to Men, I didn't know why there were 4 of them. Because all I heard was the melody and I knew, oh, it sounded pretty. I didn't realize there was harmony going on. So it wasn't until I was in a way tricked into joining the choir in high school. And it was an all men's non-audition choir. It's just if you want to be in, you got in. And he was taking us all to Six Flags for free. So it was a little more motivation for us to go in because we knew that trip was part of the class. I didn't know. I showed up for the first class and I realized it was a singing class. But it wasn't until he did an exercise where he's like, okay, basses, you guys go la, and you guys are the baritones, you guys la, and tenors, you go la, everyone at the same time, la. And I heard harmony built, and for the first time, it was, those videos of when you see people who are colorblind and put on glasses it was like I could hear music in its full depth for the first time. And all, cartoon theme songs, I could hear harmonies for the first time. And I was looking for it everywhere. I was obsessed. And so that was my introduction to music. It was in that choir. And so I knew that I wanted to sing in choir very, very badly. I just enjoyed it. I didn't even care if I was good. Honestly, it was just, I just showed up and did it passionately, and I could mimic sounds. But fortunately for me, well, I had a couple things going for me. I did a lot of mimicking of like sounds and things as a kid. And I grew up in Nigeria, and my tribe, Yoruba tribe, our language is tonal. And so that definitely helped a lot with so I came into music with a better ear than some people would, being introduced to music at 16 for the first time, like in that way. And so with wanting to sing, so when I knew that I wanted to sing in choir, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do for a living. For the first time in my life, I knew what I wanted to do. And I found out they were professional choirs. I didn't know much about opera or anything at this. I've never, it was a completely foreign world to me. The most introduction to opera I had was from Bugs Bunny or Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry. And so, I just wanted to sing in choir. And so I kept singing in choirs. And when I got to college, I auditioned into the top choir. And when you did that, you got free voice lessons at that school. And so I was and so I knew I wanted to sing in choir professionally. And so I was like, okay, I'll take a voice lesson. And so I'm working with this voice teacher for a while. And then one day he says, I think you should try singing opera. And at the time I was like, hell no, nope. It's loud, it's boring. It's like, I don't want to, and honestly, I was just scared. I didn't know anything about opera. But I wasn't. And so he was going through some technical things with me. It's like, let's try some different technical things. And that was a learning curve I had for a lot of my career. And honestly, what I'm talking about is so the technicalities of my larynx and my pharynx and soft palate and tongue, it was foreign to me. And so he's trying to communicate this to me because he recognizes that I have a decent voice, and he's trying to bring it out in this short voice lesson. And he's trying all these technical things, and it's very much like this for me, except while juggling. And so he said, just try and sound like a ghost. I was like, oh. And immediately the larynx dropped, soft palate went up. I was like, oh, and I forgot what I was singing, but like, oh, and he's like, okay, that's better. Now think of the ghost, angry. So I was like, oh, he's like, yeah. And so a lot of my initial training with opera was in colors, analogies, shapes. It's like more angry, add more blue, and it worked for me. That was a lot of the way I translated, how to sing. And then when I actually went to a university for my formal, real opera training, I had to do a lot of translating. I was like, okay, lower pharynx and larynx. And it's like, okay, so that's ghost. And I would do that. And as I got through my degree program, I eventually started to process, but I still have both bag of tricks that I kind of use at the same time, which has been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Wow. So because you hear about singers thinking, okay, I'm going to think in colors and that helps them, or I'm going to think in these sounds, whereas that kind of makes this gestalt technique where you don't have to be manipulating all these different parts to make a sound. It seems more organic in some ways, if it works for you.
Yeah, it does. And I found it works for a lot of singers where, because we're all different kinds of creative types. And so for some of us, if we're thinking technically, and, we've all seen it on stage where you see them thinking technique while they're singing and trying to tell a story and sing a song. Whereas for me, and I'm sure other singers, in the practice room, because I want that percent better, like every inch I can get, so I get to the nitty gritty, Like, what exactly is my larynx doing? It's like, okay, this is, oh, that it's because it's an E, that's my passaggio. Okay, how am I gonna think? But even with that, the slight tilting of the larynx, well, I'll explain that in a second, the slight tilting to like navigate my passaggio and something that I do. In the practice room, there's a ton of that technical thinking, and I'm in the mirror, I'm watching my larynx as I'm saying, but as I'm in there, when I finally get it, I kind of translate it into, the tilting of the larynx around my passaggio. I think of being at a house party and not knowing anyone, and I'm trying to walk around the corridor, and there's someone standing right by the wall with their back, and having a conversation. I don't want to bump into them, and so I think of like quickly just like kind of like edging around them, and I feel like that's what my larynx is doing around my passaggio. So I know whenever I sing that phrase, like, oh, get around the part, but still stay in the party. And so in my mind, the story's still going on or whatever. Like I'm telling the story, I'm the character, I'm singing the song, but I get to that part, and technically, so I need my technical trick, because I'm still thinking, if it's and I'm mentioning the times where it's like an issue for me. No, sometimes it's not, but
yeah.
When it's an issue, I have to remember, instead of going entirely into technique, I don't want that to show up on my face. So I still, I'm singing, I'm in a party, I'm like, oh, I have to get around. I'm like, but I'm still having a good time. It's a little awkward moment, and because that happens, the combination of me keeping the performance going and that little, even though it may not be entirely as smooth as I want it to be, there's still little, until like, it becomes second nature. I don't disturb the performance for the other. They're still taking in, he's having a good time, or whatever is going on. And that's a lot of how I've been handling technique throughout the years in performance.
That's fascinating. I love that description.
Thanks.
I've never heard anything that creative before.
I use a lot of analogies. It just has worked for me for translating, if you will.
So what's your biggest technical hang up? Like, what do you have to work on the most?
Oh, wow. I'm laughing because there's this. And it's like, but I'm not talking about that publicly. Okay, what's like this? There's some things that you feel like, why do I still struggle with that at a certain point in your development as an artist.
But don't you find that's like all, like when you boil it down, like even, if we look back on the greats, right? Mm-hmm. Can you boil down even like, I'm thinking Renata Tebaldi, right? Okay, like she had some issues, and really it could just be boiled down to the most basic thing that we do teach undergrads, right? Like, so it doesn't matter what level you're at.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Okay. All right. So my biggest issue that I deal with certain foreign languages, mostly French, is keeping the line going while still giving the consonants what they're dealing with the consonants, because because the other language besides English that I am familiar with very well is the language of my tribe, Yoruba, that I heard growing up. When I start to sing in a foreign accent or a foreign language, anything besides English for me, it's I get a lot of this accent showing up, which is great most of the time because there are lots of pure vowels in. Can you see how visual I am that I'm doing? Yeah, yes. There are lots of pure vowels in my, and it looks like I'm holding the music behind me. There are lots of pure vowels in my language, in Yoruba, and so that comes in really handy as far as me never, doing those diphthongs that we do in English. However, our language is very, our consonants are very hard, like German I sing German all day, every day. I love singing in German because he knows what he has to say. Thank you. He's speaking like he means it. But French is like such a delicate thing because besides the language, the not having that syllabic dance that we have with all the other languages, those consonants they're not the same. So so the image I have in my mind, this is like a weird thing, but there's like these like little bags of water, like little balloons of water balloons, I guess, hanging from the wall. And I'm going down a hallway. That's the line that I'm singing. And these little balloons hanging off to the side, or I guess I'll do it this way, up to the side down the hallway. And my job is to jog through and like, I have to tap each balloon. But if I hit it too hard, the balloon will explode. And so with German, I can go boom, 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 it's fine. But with French, I have to go through and go, and that's the dance part. While still, and I can do that, but I'm gonna trip, or I'm gonna slow down, or something's gonna happen with my momentum, my line. And if someone's just, as the audience, just watching my feet and hearing the line, it's like, what's going on there? It's like chopping, and then as a singer, I go into my head when I notice it, and then I'm back in the practice room, and I have to,
that is tricky.
It is.
Yeah. And, like you bring up such a good point, because I've often been really interested in this and doing a study on this, how people like growing up with certain language influences. So, if you grow up speaking two different languages, how that influences your vocal position even. So you were saying that your language of the tribe is tonal, right? But very percussive in terms of the consonants.
Yes. And we speak lower in our, the tessitura of my tribe of Yoruba is much lower. So when I'm speaking to an American person, I usually speak up here. But if I was speaking to my mother, I would be speaking down here. And this is the way the women, the men, we usually speak down here. What is great about, I'll just say, what is great about speaking down here is this is also where I sing. The larynx is relaxed, everything is, and this is home.
Fascinating. Yeah.
And so there is a kind of that, like, the only issue is like my French has a Nigerian accent sometimes. And that's one thing I have to, which is interesting because I end up singing a lot of French. But it's I feel like every singer has that one nemesis, whether it's a song, whether it's another singer, whether it's a technique that keeps showing up throughout the career. And it's like, oh, it's you again. We meet again kind of thing. And me, it's French, which, or the kind of French that I have difficulty with. Like I can, I've done Escamillo several times. That's fine, but give me Valentin.
I was just gonna say,
I'm like,
yes.
Yeah, that's Almonte is my white whale. I mean, I sing it and I love the song, and and between me and you, I'm actually working on a hip opera version of it, which is going to be fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's because it's such a beautiful melody. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that right now, but it's that's going to be fun. But I sing it a lot because I love the melody. I love it, and I've gotten in auditions. I will offer it often because I think, I don't know, I don't like the idea of me being afraid of it. I like the idea of like a friendly competition, like every single time. And I get better and better, but I don't ever feel like I've mastered it yet because it's an interesting thing. But yeah, I won't be say that's one of my favorites and most difficult for some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've heard that a lot of times. I think it was Corelli. They were saying, I forget what role it was, but he was terrified of this role. It was one of his signatures. And it was like always just on the cusp for him. And he was always nervous about it.
Yeah.
And like, so this is funny because it seems like French is your jam, but it's like something you think about, but maybe it's because you take so much care with it too.
Maybe awesome. That's what I've just spent more time with French because it's been more difficult. It's kind of like that problem child that becomes the favorite, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't want to say favorites. I don't have any kids, so I don't have to worry about that. But
Well, take us back to this house party, okay? And you're
Okay.
talking about like going around, you got to turn the baritone voice. What do you do? Like, what kind of vowels do you use? What do you think? What are some of your tricks in general, if you're working on that in the practice room?
If I'm working in general, so what are my tricks? Like so my passaggio hangs out around E. That's it. And so most of the time, so I like I said, I only resort to technique when I feel like something needs to be fixed. So I try not to generally, well, that's not true. I think a lot of it's just kind of settled over the years and become second nature, but I don't mentally come into it until there's a hang up and I'm like, okay. And so one of the issues one of the things I cannot stand is when I hear the singer go from like chest to head and like that, when I can hear that flip, like, and I know you're in a different, for me, it feels like almost switching characters to me, like mid-song. And it's like, what just happened emotionally? And it's always been jarring for me. So that's something I've always tried to avoid. And so once I get around my passaggio, and if I'm hearing that happen, I will usually, so besides the tilt, I'll modify the vowels on either end if necessary and find like the close, the common denominator. So if I need to, close the next vowel a little more just to unify and just to make that a little more, in a way, it's almost like, it's almost like I'm trying to turn a corner, and that way of adjusting the vowel, because I'm trying to get from here to here, adjusting the vowel feels like flattening out the corner. So I'm not so much tilting as much where I'm just kind of squeezing by, if that makes sense. And that's what's, I know when you said the practice room, I'm trying to stay away from the analogies in my explanation, but that's a lot of the way I process the music. So I'll adjust I'll vowel modify and find some sort of unification in between to smooth through that. That's been my go-to between those two. That takes around that tilting of the passaggio around the hallway, the corner thing.
Yeah. Was that something you had to learn as a younger singer?
No, fortunately, that is something that I remember learning from my voice teacher in college, when I got to university, because I went to a junior college first. I realized my story was a little confusing. I went to a junior college for 2 years, and that's where I had this switch over. And then he advised me to go to college or go to university, and then I got my degree. And so I remember my voice teacher explaining that to me, and explaining, using the technical terms to explain, like, you want to tilt your, and it's like, okay, put your hand here, now sing through it, like, do you feel that happening, and so on. So I learned, that is one thing that I think I still go back to technically whenever whenever I have that issue. And there are a number of those which I'm grateful for, because I would say there are a number of times where I don't have an analogy, I don't have a color or a thing for it. I know I need to just do this to be safe, if you will. Because there's sometimes where, and I say that because there's sometimes where I can't figure out this, or it's taking more time to figure out a problem, or it's a new problem on that day that I'm singing now, this is not doing that. And so, okay, how do I know I can rely on technique? When all else fails, just it's like lower larynx and blow. Just drop into it and just,
So you were describing something here. You kind of described it, but you didn't. What exactly did your teacher teach you that you think sometimes?
So how to describe the tilting of the larynx. I don't know if I could put it into words. Let me see. It was, Another way I can describe the feeling is once is like a opening up more when I get to the passaggio, the break, where I want to break, just like I hope this helps for people saying, like, once I like start to get in there, there's like a opening of the bottom, like, oh, the break is coming, and then in that opening of the bottom, the larynx kind of like gets around that break, if that makes sense. I'm hoping that helps as far as like, yeah. And that's what I think. And once I get there, then easing off that tilt. Once I get past the passage, if I'm singing, you know, a line that's going above it, it's a slight like get up to the break, open a little more, like right under, not the larynx, because the larynx is staying down, but you know what I mean, right? That's the best I can do to explain that.
No, I think that's actually, I love how you are so visual and like almost kinesthetic in your sensation of it. That's so interesting. That's really awesome. What do you think about breathing? How do you think about that? I'd love to get some more of your analogies.
Breathing is something that can't, well, no, I thought it's something I didn't think about for a long time as a singer. Because I just, you know, so I think about it now because so the visual I think of is always like filling up the tank. Whenever I see a gas station, stop and fill it up. Unless it's gonna make me late to my next appointment or whatever. But, you know, fill up the tank, because not so much for me as a singer, not so much so I don't run out of air, but the car drives better with a full tank. Like, if that makes sense. It feels like so like I'll drop the diaphragm, like fill up the tank, and then I feel like I have a bigger bag of air to work with, as opposed to, and so so that's one technical thing I always think of, like going into singing. And then
it's more of like it's more about the breath pressure than really the breath. Like you need to feel that kind of
that pressure.
Compression.
So the other thing, and I think a lot of singers have gotten this one. One of the things that helped me a lot is thinking of a balloon. You know, if you blow into a balloon and take the part you blow into and pull the top, if you've ever done that, and how it makes that whiny noise, like, but I'm pulling it, but I'm using my elbows to like squeeze the balloon, and I want to keep that. So it's easier for me to keep my elbows on something and sustain this pitch if it's full, if that makes sense. And then keeping that pressure steady. And so I think it's actually a very technical explanation of like how that's working. But and so with that, support became a big thing, because I'm doing a lot of translating in my head, because so I've found that in order to keep to you know, get through whatever I'm singing, there's a lot more work than one would realize, as far as like engaging the diaphragm and I don't want to say the core, but that's what I think about. And I'm not sure what the technical muscles are, but it feels like this engagement of the core the whole time. So you can do the tiny, so you can do the big or the tiny ta-ta-ta, but you want to have control all the way around. And that's what I thought, that's the issue. That's what took me a while to get to as a singer, and it's become very, very important for me to remember, because I was on the swim team. I grew up like swimming all the time. And so I have a very, very large lung capacity. So I was just like, just inhale, but it doesn't work that way, because you need to do all the finesse of our instrument. It's like breathing. I mean, I didn't want to say this because it's so cliche, but breathing is everything, because that's where sound comes from. And
Yeah.
so, because and if that, I feel so elementary to say, but because like it's something I have to remember as a singer, I think about this is where the sound comes from. And it's like, no, like the sound is coming from, this is where the sound comes from. This is just the shape it's coming through. And so I think of this as my voice almost. This is the music. I'm pointing to my stomach. You can.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a tank. And so all of my nuance with music like comes from here, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
It's like, I think of it almost like you're playing an instrument that's like, I don't like a balloon, and you have to, and it's like a separate instrument, like engaging the air. If you're singing coloratura, you're having to, the right fingers in this case, or whatever, you have to, but if you're doing this, you're not going to be able to make it through that phrase. Although there are some phrases where you'll have to, and getting acquainted with those muscles around your breath and keeping, but you're doing that while still doing that at the same time.
Yeah.
And that dance is, I'll say it's essential if to what I consider be like a real artist and really create nuance with like all of that, like understanding how to breathe and controlling the breath and supporting the breath has been, and that's different for everyone. And I know a lot of singers can process it very like technically what's going on, but for me, it's like, it's like colors, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like a change in energy too, right? Like,
thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Where you're balancing that kind of push and pull of the line. And that's really what's happening in the muscles in our body too, to manage that airflow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like if you hold it and push it different ways, it changes color, like the color of the energy inside. If it was like a ball with like a light in it that changed color, like, and that's because the music, like, I feel like it starts there. And like, if I breathe a certain way, I'm going to like communicate a different thing. And I think that's for me, why that happens that way, in the sense that the technique is very important, but I found, and I've had this issue I had this issue for a while, but the intent with the technique is it's almost like you're singing a song, like I think of like, like a housewife just cleaning and just humming, making up a melody, like that's the intention. And so everything that is happening is supporting that exchange of that emotion, and not so much singing correctly, executing that correctly. And so I think that's how I've ended up. Because for me, if I start to think, I know for a lot of singers, they can like think that like, okay, I want this to ring because I'm furious and I need it to ring a certain way to make the audience feel that. And I know if I do this, if I do it, I'll achieve that. And so they're technically click, click, click. Every time I sing this, I do that, and it works. But for me, I remember when that lady's kid like fell into the gutter, how she like screamed when I was little, and that like piercing cut, like I think that, and this is work in a practice room. I'll think those emotions, then observe what's going on technically.
Wow. Yeah.
And then remember the feeling, especially the feeling, and not so much the sound. So another thing I do when I'm working technique, I'll put like earbuds in that like noise cancel, and then I'll sing whatever I go through, because I want to just feel. I want it to feel right, because that's the one thing I found that I could still bring to my performance and still have communication with without it showing up on my face, the way it feels in my body. Because if I start thinking of what I'm doing, yeah. And yeah, I know that was that was a tangent, but
no, it's true. Like if I guess I'm thinking about like working out, right? Like, so if you're running away from a lion, like you're not thinking about, okay, are my muscles contracting this way? You probably won't get as tired if you're running away from a lion, because there's some intention there and adrenaline, obviously, than you would if you're like, okay, I'm going to force myself to train for this marathon, and I'm going to make sure I have the correct alignment. And almost by like focusing on the muscles too much and focusing on what they're doing and optimizing yourself, you're almost making yourself tired, because there isn't that like perpetuation of intention and like just run, like just go. And so that's kind of what you're describing too, is using that life force to keep that energy flowing and to get yourself in alignment without having to manipulate all these elements.
So with your analogy of like running from the lion gets close to you, you panic, you do something different, it works. And I'm as a singer, it's important for me to know, and that's what I do in the practice room. Like I run from the lion, but I'm paying attention to what happens. The thing works. I'm like, cool. Next time I'm running away from a tiger, I know like, hey, this is the thing that works for that. And so I have that emotion, and I'm aware of what's happening technically. And the reason I do that, for me, I found it's a much more organic way to getting to a proper, healthy technique that works for me to create the sound and the emotion that I want. And then, and then holding on to that and knowing that, okay, that's my technique. And hanging on to the relationship between the feeling, like exactly how I place my feet if I'm like running away from the lion, and the feeling of like, I know this will give me the freedom, and then like anticipating that and working that, further into what you're doing. Yeah, it's that's one of my ways of like, and it's also like, I don't like checking the math, because I'll be given like a technical thing to do, and it may work, it doesn't work for me, but if I can find like, if I find like an emotional, I guess, catalyst to elicit that same, if I get that, there are many roads to Rome. And if like I get to the same road, then I'm like, okay, this works for me, cool. And because I found there are a lot of things for singers that are one size fits all. Like if you're singing, you have to, like, if you're singing opera, drop your larynx.
Right.
But there's some things that's like, that doesn't work for me, or this, like, like I met a tenor that always has to drink a glass of whole cow's milk before a performance, and gets his voice exactly where he wants. The phlegm by the vocal cords, it's like the exact consistency he needs. Like and it works for him. So
yeah, exactly. So talk to me about high notes.
High notes. So this is my relationship with high notes. Oh, and what was fun about, I started singing high notes before I learned how to sing opera properly. So I had the one opera recording I love was one of Pavarotti's performances of Vesti la Giubba. And so I'm in my car singing constantly. And the thought in my head was like, oh, I'm just mimicking his sound or whatever. It wasn't until I became a singer. It was like, well, one, you're not supposed to do that. Two, that's a tenor aria. You're not supposed to sing that. But so funny enough, coming full circle, where I arrived, and I heard Pavarotti say the same thing in somewhere, or I heard that he said this, but it could be one of those legends of our industry. We said, like, the way the high note wants to come out, let it happen that way. It's almost like the way I think of like, the way I think of like raising a kid. has a kid, and you know the kid is, he starts to do like move around a lot at a certain age. You're like, oh, okay, I think he might be a dancer. So you do what you can to support the dancer until he decides or she decides something else or whatever, and so on. So with my high notes, that's not entirely true. I just remember because I just went into and fill up the tank support. I don't. So with my high, that's. I really just think the way it wants to. Well, the biggest thing is not to be afraid of it. That has happened a number of times because I can't tell you how many times that, and my voice teacher is the one who has pointed this out to me, where I sing this effortlessly, but I know, I don't know, this high note, I was like, oh, that's, or like at the end of Nessun Dorma, or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. And meanwhile, I've been singing something else that's higher easily because I'm not worried about it. Not regularly, I'm not singing tenor rap. I don't want to make it sound like I'm regularly doing that. But just for, just for fun, if I know that this is difficult and I never got that note about this, something else different happens for me. And I'm saying this because I'm sure some of your viewers are the same. And like, I was afraid to say this out loud for so long. But yeah, oh shoot, I completely lost my train of thought. High notes. Oh yeah, but with my high notes, I fearlessly let them be what they want to be. Like observe as you're getting on, but let them be. I don't think too much about high notes. Mm-hmm. I don't. Fortunately, that's something for me that's one of the few things I've had trouble with, and it's been very helpful in my career because we love our high notes, and the work I've had to do is in the the trenches, the home, like my usual tessitura. But yeah, high notes. Yeah, I don't have much of our high notes.
It's interesting because I almost feel like your experimentation at a young age and the mimicry probably helped form really healthy like muscular patterns for those high notes.
I think so. Actually, yeah, because I've seen, I'll have, there will be pictures posted of me, singing a high note. And my friends will comment like, I wish I didn't have any tension in my tongue and the way in the set of your jaw and whatever. But I think because there were never things I was told to be careful of, they never became issues. Or I didn't know that those, I think I got there organically. I feel like as humans, we know how to sing and we spend a lot of time remembering. When we decide we want to sing, we spend a lot of time getting back to I remember one of my favorite lessons was I was changing a diaper for one of my cousins and I was watching him breathe. And it rocked me. I was like, his chest isn't moving at all. And at first it's like, oh, it's like a baby. I was like, no, like he's breathing properly. His chest not moving. It's all down here. And I mean, I realized this years ago and I was just like, why does that stop? And it's just a journey back to, I don't know. There's all kinds of theories I have, but I haven't tested any of them.
Gravity.
Gravity.
You get older, the gravity just starts pushing on you.
That's what it is, and you need.
Speaking of that, what do you think about posture? I mean, you're sporty, so you probably have a lot better alignment than most people.
I do. I practice a lot of yoga.
Wonderful.
I studied Alexander technique, and I have really good so another cultural thing. My posture is, I have good posture in the United States. In Nigeria, it's not uncommon to see my posture is not unusual.
Yeah.
And I think it's different levels of cultural things. But for that reason, I found that I've noticed whenever I have to sing I have to sing in not my usual posture, if I'm playing, Rigoletto or anything else any character where I decide like a choice, anything, a little slouch in the way he stands or something, I always have to like almost shift the entire color setting to produce the same sound, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
For me. So like, I think it's like watching the same movie, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, but we want to make this look old, so tilt the color a little bit. But if I want to still, that's a weird analogy, but it's as if like watching a movie that the whole color is off, and it's like, okay, I just have to change the setting of my screen so it'll be the right color. And so when anything happens with my posture, anything different, there's some shift in the way I'm holding the bag, so the color, but it's all down here. It's all in my breath. I do a lot. I sing a lot in the car just because I've always, in cities, we have neighbors and stuff like that. I don't want to, I'm like really nervous about, not nervous, but I'm just really, it bugs me when I know that I'm possibly disturbing someone. And so I sing a lot in my car. Just not like I go to the car to sing, but whenever I'm in my car, I'm just constantly singing. So, but I've learned that it's almost like two different settings. Like, because I practice so much sitting in the car, I've learned that you develop there's like a different kind of support that you develop, which comes in handy a lot on stage, because we end up like, we're staged in all kinds of different positions. But sitting down singing, especially when I don't have the luxury of, often I will sit and like put one leg behind the other, like in like slightly this way, just to give a little more room for me to breathe down here. But, driving, I don't get the benefit of doing that. And so with both legs locked up, I have to find more room in my back. Than I usually use. And I know as singers, they take full breaths, breathe into your back. But, just like all singers, we don't always do everything the way we should 100%. But it's fun to have that when I need it. And so it's given me kind of like, I don't want to say like an edge, but a little added thing I can do as a character. Sometimes my character, it makes no sense for them to be sitting in a way for them to be comfortably singing. And it's so important for me for the story to be uninterrupted. And so I will sit the way he needs to sit for whatever that reason, and breathe more into my back and support, support from the front, like I'm engaging. Just to keep the bag taut, if you will, because I still want the sound to sound as if, whatever I need to do, whatever setting I need to change to create the feeling, and to get back there, that's all there is for me.
That's awesome. So do you purposefully exercise your falsetto?
Not purposely.
Did you ever?
Not for the purpose of exercising my falsetto. It was more navigating my passaggio. I would do this thing where I would slide and try and get down there as smoothly as I can, and not because I learned that I could sing up through my passaggio. I could. It's a different analogy. Up through my passaggio is the corner, but down through is like, it's like sliding. It's like sliding through a bunch. Okay, so there's like this. It's like like there'll be a manhole in the street in the city. You can like drop down, and sometimes in the movies, I guess you go through a sewer and you can drop down a level further. But it's like a bunch of manholes, like stacked next to each other, or like on top of each other. And the idea is for me to like get down there without touching the edges at all.
Oh, wow.
And so, but what's funny is like they're not completely 100% aligned. There's like slightly off. So there's like a little bit of like that going
like,
through. And and that's how I think of, that's how I feel coming down from my falsetto through passaggio. But actually singing up there, I don't practice that. I don't practice it.
Okay.
I probably should, because I've been doing, just for fun. It's something I've learned that people who aren't opera singers or aren't typical opera fans, it's like a really fun magic trick, a real fun trick to have in the bag of tricks to just throw out. Like it's always like tantalizing. So yeah, but I haven't practiced it.
That's it. So before I ask my last question, I'd love you to tell me a little bit about your hip hopera movement, and also about any kind of vocal things that you do, whether it's technical or musical, that you do to sort of change the vocalism from the opera. And by the way, we will link the links to your record here so people can hear if they haven't heard. It's fantastic. You got to seriously jam out to this stuff. So, but tell us a little bit about some of the modifications you do as a singer.
So with a lot of the one key thing with my hip hopera music for me that's different. One of the biggest differences from typical opera in this is, for me, the rhythm is king in this, and it has to stay. That has to be in place. And so one of the things I've been experiencing, because a lot of these songs I'm singing are arias I've already known, is I guess using different because I'm not, I don't want to say unlearning things, but I'm not using the same approaches to, for instance, certain vowels that I will modify in order to get, through passaggio. With the, that's not a good analogy. That's hard to explain. But essentially, the broad strokes is there's certain technical things I've done to navigate the aria for different reasons. Retards, cadenza, whereas in this case, I'm not doing it in that same way. Right. And so I found that there's the muscle memory of the way I sing that aria when I sing that word. And in order to perform it the way I do for hip opera, I have to find a new trick a new technique, a new technical approach, or replace that habit with something else. So I'm trying to think of it like an exact comparison of something I've done, and it's tricky because, once again, it's one of those I sing through it and it's like, wait, that feels weird. And it's like, oh, that's because try this, and then yeah. But I can tell you there are minor adjustments in order to sing opera as hip opera.
Yeah. Vowels too? Do you change vowels at all, or no?
I change, it depends on what I'm singing. So one of the things, whenever I'm singing something in English in hip opera, that I definitely do change the vowels often, because a lot of my audiences are American. And for common, because when we sing English, we sing like a proper opera singer, and we have a lot of pure vowels, and our diphthongs are not usually the way they would be if we're speaking. Right. And so that has been a challenge, or something I've had to work with, because what I've had to do is, instead of like staying on a pure vowel until the last and then giving a diphthong, I've had to learn how to evenly distribute the spread from the diphthong through the vowel, or as closely to the way it's spoken, so it still sounds like English. If I I'm trying to think of it like in English, warm as the autumn light, I would modify that to go warm as, no, not quite that chewy, but warm. warm as the autumn light. It's a little, I chew the vowels a little more.
Yes.
To communicate. So with that, the thought was, I need them to understand this without super titles. Like, can you understand? And then
that makes sense.
And then I observed what was going on. I was like, oh, I brought the diphthongs, like you just smear it all the way through. And that has been tricky because you want to keep the line going. You want to, and like everything, it still needs to be good music, but it's hard especially like one of the things, like I want to, the best I can, keep my, keep that third form and keep the ring through everything I'm singing, even with my hip opera stuff. But when you're like chewing vowels, that's a tricky thing. And so that has required actual work, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I think it makes it a little easier, at least on the English ears, to hear it. Like, but
for sure,
I don't know. There's a lot of room for improper technique or unhealthy habits doing that. And that's where it gets kind of tricky.
That's why I think it's so amazing what you're doing. Because when I listen to it, it's like, oh my God, yes, it is hip opera, but it's like perfect vocal technique too. It's because usually you would hear somebody maybe trying to do something like that, right? And sort of compromising the instrument. And that's what impresses me so much about this, is you're really not. So.
Yeah, it's well, this I can say, a lot of what I've had to do is use the same technique I would use for patter.
Yeah.
And that has, because I'll take some rhythms and like shorten it and like make it quicker just to give the hip hop feel. And I've had to like use the same pattern thing for lines that, and what's funny, it's made my patter better, because when you have to sing and like sing that and like make it, that's not what I'm doing, but make it da 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 da, your ear still misses this. And so it's going to put it in there.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's what's been happening for me. So my pattern now is still ta 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 ta, but there's still, and that has been one of the adjustments, like pattery flow, because you don't want it to sound like patter unless it's patter.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's been the dance.
So tell us, if you have to warm up your voice in like 5 minutes in the car, okay, what is the one vocalise that you cannot do without?
I cannot do without. It's like simple, basic, but for me, it feels like ironing, like if I'm ironing a shirt, like in between the buttons, like getting every single, like, and if there's something funny, it's like, okay, we're staying here and working it out. We're not moving up a half step until this is worked. Okay, moving on. And like
this is
slow.
on right?
Yeah.
That's all. It's like the one vowel sopranos can't sing on, so it's very foreign to us.
So I will start on an and no. I usually start on an and get to as soon as I can, just because I like the exercise of not thinking goes into and goes into if that makes sense.
Totally.
And so I like
That's awesome.
That's my go-to.
I love that. Nice and slow. I love that image of ironing too, because I actually do something similar, and I'm always thinking, I'm like ironing out the rough edges right now.
Yeah. It's like a quick one.
Yeah. So tell us where, I mean, your presence is all over the internet, but what do you have coming up that you can announce to us? Where can we find you, or can we stay in the know?
Well, okay, so you can follow the places on social media that I'm most active are Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I think in that order. And so you can find me there. If you Google Babatunde Hip Hopera, that'll take you to me, like everywhere, wherever I am. I am working on it. So I put De La Chita was the name of my EP. Put that out as 3 tracks. And based on what's happened with that, I'm working on a full album. And
Awesome.
that will be done next year.
Woo.
I don't know when yet. Pandemic kind of slowed things down, but that'll be happening next year. And that is the next little, I have a few other things, smaller things coming out. And I'll be doing, but that's the next big thing coming from me. And that's kind of where a lot of my energy and focus is going right now. And that's my new baby.
That's awesome. So sign up for your mailing list to stay in the know about when that album is coming out, right?
Yes. If you go to hiphoperaworld.com, you can sign up for my mailing list. Oh yeah, that's a good hub to find me everywhere. hiphoperaworld.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
hiphoperaworld.com. We will put that in the video so people can find that. Fantastic. Sweet. Well, Babatunde, thank you so much for meeting with me. I think what I loved so much was your imagery, because I think that's going to help a lot of people using those creative analogies to sort of get around the nitty gritty of the technique and get to what is it? Like, what are we doing? This wholesome approach. So thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. We will catch up with you soon.
All righty. Take care.
Bye.